The Trump and Elon derangement has gotten so bad, we're at the point where people are literally vandalizing and torching Tesla stations, recharge stations, and Tesla vehicles, Tesla dealerships. Let's listen to Elon as he comments on all this. And you're going to want to stick around to the end as he really breaks down who he thinks is behind this, and I give my breakdown of this whole situation.
You're into robotics, AI. You are working with Neuralink so the blind can see and people with spinal cord injuries may one day walk. You help people in North Carolina. You help people in California when they have no communications. And I watch all of this and I have to ask, why? Why do I see people like I woke up this morning and saw that Teslas were put ablaze in one of your dealerships in Vegas? I've seen this happen all over the country. Bullets are being fired. Charging stations are put ablaze. Teslas are being put ablaze. You have experienced assassination, threats of assassination for you and your family. What have you done that warrants this?
Let me just share my thoughts real quick. Have you noticed that when the right, the conservative movement, for the most part, barring January 6th, now, if there's any major incident that has taken place other than January 6th, please help me out. But typically, and the jury's still out on exactly what went down on January 6th, and I hope Trump addresses it down the road. But have you noticed that consistently, when the right doesn't like you or doesn't agree for the most part, we'll boycott, we'll even protest on occasion. But when the left disagrees, you name the issue. And honestly, if you can think of one, please comment down below. But you name the issue. When they disagree with you, violence ensues. Think about every issue. COVID vaccines, COVID lockdowns. Going back further, Michael Brown, George Floyd, the entire summer, the so-called summer of love. Over $2 billion worth of damage nationwide, over 220 cities, protests, violent protests. We actually had federal buildings and police stations torched, businesses torched, mostly in the inner city. Over 24 people murdered that year. Most people believe that the murders are linked to the protests. The overturning of Roe v. Wade, there were threats on the Supreme Court justice's life. There was actually a dude was literally planning on kidnapping one of the justices. Palestine, Ukraine, you name the issue. Every time they disagree, violence ensues. I saw someone post something similar on Facebook, basically making the same statement. There's a world of difference between the political left and the right. And I think that one aspect of that is the secular indoctrination for the political left. A lot of these folks who get out there and they protest and who want to inflict harm and equate disagreement with violence are college educated. Now, some will believe, like if you listen to Sunny Hostin from The View, she'll believe that we are misinformed, those of us who don't have a college degree. I think we just aren't indoctrinated. That's the issue. You go off 4 years, you're around nothing, primarily peers of your same age group, and you are put in a position where you have to make decisions on your own. And you oftentimes, a lot of these young people want to fit in. So they'll go along with the crowd in order to fit in. And I think that's largely the primary factor, one of the main ingredients to what we're seeing with the violence from the left. You disagree with Elon Musk, you disagree with Donald Trump, you try to kill him. You disagree with someone on the right, especially someone on the right who has a larger platform. What do? You dox them, and then you try to get them swatted, where you make a fake 911 call, and then you have a SWAT team show up and attempt to breach in or something like that, in hopes probably that they'll end up getting killed. There is a world of difference between the ideology and the mindset of those on the political left and those on the right.
I see nothing that you have done except help our country.
Yeah, I mean, it's really come as quite a shock to me that there's this level of really hatred and violence from the left. I always thought the left, or Democrats, were supposed to be the party of empathy, the party of caring.
And that whole tolerance movement, that is only tolerance towards those that they agree with. They will not, and I know I'm painting with a broad brush. I know there are people who align with those on the left who don't espouse to violence. I get all that. But when you look at it from a more national scale, you'll see that it's typically the case. What do you see at universities? Take this whole incident here with the dude who Trump was trying to deport. What are you hearing from those on the left? It's a free speech issue. This guy shouldn't be deported, blah, blah, blah. But when it came down to COVID, what did they do? Those of us who had different opinions, even physicians and scientists and professors and experts in the field, what happened largely? We were silenced. Our content was suppressed online. When it comes down to the LGBT issue, if you disagree, what happens? Oftentimes, you get suppressed largely. You can lose your job. You can get kicked out of schools. They are all about free speech when it agrees with them. What happens when a Charlie Kirk or a Ben Shapiro or one of these guys try to come to some of these universities, some of these more liberal, more progressive universities? Protests, people getting physically attacked, near riots, sometimes even riots. These people are so full of crap and so full of mess when it comes down to this claim of free speech, or I care about free speech. No, you don't. No, you don't. You care about your ability to speak freely, but anybody that disagrees with you, you have to silence. Or in some cases, if it's like family, sadly, people just stop talking to you instead of having deep conversations. They just cut you off completely. It's really, really sad. And this is all taught in the university systems. This is all taught with these really radical, and sometimes not even so radical, left-wing ideologies.
And yet they're burning down cars, they're firebombing dealerships, they're firing bullets into dealerships, they're just, smashing up Teslas. Tesla is a peaceful company. We've never done anything harmful. I've never done anything harmful. I've only done productive things. So I think we just have a deranged, there's some kind of mental illness thing going on here.
Yeah, it's called TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome. Elon was the darling of the left with the electric vehicles, and his ideology, his mindset is largely more center left, from what I know. But once he aligned himself with Trump and started speaking out against DEI and the LGBT radicals, especially the trans issue, that's when he became public enemy number one or number two.
This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
and I think there are larger forces at work as well. I mean, I don't know who's funding it and who's coordinating it, because 100%. This is crazy. I've never seen anything like this.
I think he's 100% spot on. Every time there's a major incident, all of a sudden there are riots popping up all over the country. George Floyd, all the riots across the country were largely based on the false narrative that Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd because he was a racist, because race was a primary issue. Even though there were no civil rights charges that came down against Derek Chauvin, there was no evidence to show that why he did what he did was racially motivated. None whatsoever. But largely, BLM brought in hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, based on that same false narrative. And that same false narrative has impacted our culture and caused utter chaos. And you can't tell me No one can convince me that there isn't some bigger movement behind it. And I'm a little surprised that Elon doesn't know what's going on. I mean, I'm not saying he'd know all the details, but he says he's surprised. And granted, he runs a ton of companies, so maybe he just isn't hip to what's happened over the last 10, 15 years. But my goodness, so many things have happened within our culture, within our society. All the violence that has taken place in recent years. This should really come as no surprise to anybody who's been paying attention.
You actually tweeted out, and I'll put it on the screen, the level of violence is insane. It is deeply wrong. Tesla just makes electric cars and has done nothing to deserve these evil attacks. You just rescued 2 astronauts that have been in space for 286 days. They were only supposed to be there 8. You helped the people in North Carolina, Tennessee, California. You have, I think, the most creative and innovative car on the market. You created Starlink for communications that's used by hundreds of countries. You're working on helping the blind see and all of these other things. Is it really come down to the basic, you're aligned with President Donald Trump, who also is a friend of mine, and that you have identified well over $100 billion in waste, fraud, abuse that our federal government never should have been spending? Is that what it comes down to?
And the propagandists on the left have vilified this man into saying he's some type of evil tyrant who wants to get all your information and somehow use it against you, even though he's literally the richest man in the world. It makes zero sense. They're pissed off, they're angry, they're really afraid, largely because they know that their illegal money machine, where they're using taxpayer funds to cause all kinds of chaos all across the world and probably support their leftist agenda. All of this nonsense is about to dry up. And they got caught red-handed.
Yeah, it turns out when you take away people's, what the money they're receiving fraudulently, they get very upset, and they basically want to kill me because I'm stopping their fraud, and they want to hurt Tesla because we're stopping this terrible waste and corruption in the government. And well, I guess they're bad people. Bad people will do bad things.
Well, I know that overall, financially, in the end, yes, they can hurt you, but the people that they'll end up hurting are the people that work in your dealerships that may risk losing their job. The people that they may end up hurting are the people that work on the line and build the Teslas.
And the reality is a lot of these folks don't care. They feign, as I said before, they feign compassion. They act like they care, but they really don't. It is all a selfish, individualistic mindset. My feelings are hurt. I feel as if I'm oppressed somehow because of your speech. So therefore, I'm justified in doing to you whatever I want.
They're going to be the ones hurt. And that to me is despicable on their part, just because they might have a political difference or perceived political difference. Let me ask you this, because I think this is pretty important. The average American makes $66,000 a year. We're close to $40,000 in debt. You said to me in our last interview, we won't have a country.
I think you meant 40 trillion.
Country unless we fix it now. Can you explain why this is so important that we identify all this waste?
Yes, the government the government waste and fraud is so high that it's causing a $2 trillion annual deficit. So that the cost of our debt has gotten so high that just the interest payments on the debt exceed the entire military budget. And it was just growing out of control. So the country was going bankrupt. It's just, country is no different from a person. If a country overspends and doesn't spend wisely, just like a person, a country will go bankrupt. So the reason I'm here is because I'm very worried about America going bankrupt due to the corruption and waste.
And real quick, I was speaking on how people were saying they're concerned about Elon having their information. Do you realize that this man was literally a co-founder of PayPal, where he had access to all of your social security numbers, your bank account numbers. He had access to all of that. The man has more than enough money where he doesn't need anything that any of us can offer him. He doesn't need our social security numbers. What's that going to do? He has a top secret security clearance from SpaceX, if I'm not mistaken. But yet, at our local DMV, or when we go to the store and we give somebody our credit card, when we bank online, we put our PIN codes in and we share our bank account numbers and all of that information to unknown masses of people. But we don't worry about that. But yet we're supposed to be afraid and concerned because the richest man in the world has access to our social security number. Y'all need to stop, for real.
And if we don't do something about it, the ship of America is going to sink. And we're all on that ship, and this may be a message to, people out there who have, are wealthy, have a lot of means, or control companies. It's like, just remember, we're all on ship of America here. Your company is not going to exist if the ship of America sinks. And we should do everything we possibly can to ensure that America is strong for far into the future.
And for doing that, we're all sunk. And doing that, you should not have your company be a victim of domestic terrorism. If I may, one last question. When I interviewed you and President Trump together, one of the questions I asked.
Just think about it like this. Imagine if someone did this to Kamala Harris or somebody on the, or a Democratic senator, or someone who worked for them, or even like a Bill Gates, somebody, or George Soros, someone that the left loves, who started speaking out publicly, and then someone firebombed their car or their business. How do you think the response would be? Honestly, I really want some of y'all who may disagree with me to think these things through. Who reacts violently as often as those on the political left? Help me out with that, straight up. The media and the leftist politicians made some of y'all think that January 6th was the worst event in American history. Some people literally compared it to Pearl Harbor. I think Kamala Harris said it was worse than the 9/11 attack. Does that even make any kind of sense whatsoever? Does that make any kind of sense whatsoever to anybody out there who's reasonable? No one died on that day. As far as any police officers, as much as they wanted folks to believe it, some cops died later on. There was an officer who died the next day. I think it was a stroke or something like that. But more than likely, he had medical issues that were a precursor more than a violent incident that took place. And I'm not trying to act like January 6th was something irrelevant. I have my concerns as to what exactly went down. I personally believe that there were some agitators in the crowd, whether it was FBI, CIA, or whoever. And I think as time goes on, we'll learn more about that when a proper investigation is had on everything that went down, because there was really no investigation on why and how things went down. But to compare January 6th to Pearl Harbor and 9/11 is insane. And there's no reasonable justification to make such a ridiculous statement or statements. But yet, again, you take what's happening with Elon Musk and you apply that with anybody on the political left or in the media for that matter, whoever. What do you think the media response would be? Honestly, like, these are the questions I want us to wrestle with so that we can come to a wise conclusion. We all know it would be completely different. They would be calling this out as the worst incident we've ever seen. They would say how tragic this is. But you largely hear people on the left making jokes about it, minimizing it, almost acting as if he deserves it.
both of you, was, are you aware that there are groups that want to separate you, groups that would like to divide you, groups that would like to see you not work together?
Of course.
I feel it's stronger than it's ever been. Do you get the same sense?
I think they're getting desperate because, I mean, the reason we're seeing this extreme amount of hatred and violence is because we're actually succeeding in getting rid of corruption and waste. If we weren't succeeding in getting rid of corruption and waste, they wouldn't care. But we are succeeding. Without President Trump, this would be impossible. So I'd just like to say, you know, it's only possible with this president.
The man is literally ending these insane programs worldwide where our tax dollars are being wasted, and he has been vilified and he has become the enemy. Yeah, I know he's taking away government jobs, but government has become too big. They gave people time to accept a severance package of 8 months with medical and pay for 8 months, knowing what they were planning on doing. But yet things that Obama did, things that Bill Clinton did, he's the enemy now. They're the enemy now. Man, so many of us need to pick up books and know our history and stop watching these mainstream media outlets and stop being manipulated by these fools. If you appreciate content like this, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And before you go, check out this video right here. I think you'll appreciate it.